both like listen, but also maybe engage with some of the activities that can happen during a presentation. Now I just have to figure out how to share my screen. And what are you all seeing? Probably not this.
Now we see your background. Now we see that. We're seeing the
Brilliant.
presentation. Yep.
Brilliant. Okay. Do you see the one that's not the full screen?
Yeah, we're seeing the presenter view right now.
That's annoying. How do I get it to not do that? If anyone has the quick way to fix this, how do I exit this?
Go back to play slideshow.
There. Does that work?
There you go.
There you go.
Yep, that works.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. All right. So I can't see any of you, and I'm just speaking into the void. So, like if you think my jokes are funny, maybe you could comment or something, so I'll at least know people are laughing as we go through. Okay, so today, like most of your speakers will happen this week, they're going to start just as I am right now with who I am and what I do and why I think maps are so cool. I am really enthusiastic about being a geographer, so it's not fake. I just actually am this excited about the things that we'll talk about today, and I'll get to share what I love with you. At the end of the presentation today of like how I work with GIS or how I use geospatial information, we'll have some time to just sit together and make sure everybody can get logged on to ArcGIS, and then to kind of start with some of the tasks that you'll be learning today and throughout the week. But really, like we just, all of us here on the team want you all to know how much we've really grown to love this project. And it's more of I don't know, like we just get to share something that we love with our broader community. That's also part of how we experience our world. So thanks to all of you for being here today and at least giving us the opportunity to share what we do. So as a geographer, whatever geographer you meet in your lifetime, we all do the same thing. We will pick the picture of ourselves in the field where we think we look the coolest. So this is mine. This is me, and I'm in the Sahara Desert, and I'm wearing sort of like a strange headscarf that kind of covers the neck head, and I'll tell you why that is here in a second. But this idea here is that geography is everywhere. It's the whole world. It's everyone and everything. And so when we're learning a task like how do we take all of this geographic information and do anything with it, well, GIS is one of the ways that we can do that. So right away, I might ask you, is the Saharan Desert in Montana? I think you know it's not in Montana. So already we're reaching outside of our normal lives to go think about something and look at something. And we'll talk a lot about the desert today. So we'll save some of that for later. I am on the team as the representative from Montana State University in Billings. So a lot of you are actually pretty close to me. Today I'm in Billings, and we do work directly with MSU in Bozeman. I used to work there, but it's been so great to expand our program to 2 different universities, to also then be able to include students from around like rural and tribal Montana in ways that make pretty clear pathways for all of you to hopefully someday come to college and study GIS. Like we'll be waiting. I'll have the program really expanded by then so we can handle all of our new students. So I've said that I am a geographer. I teach in the environmental studies program at MSUB. So I teach classes like Introduction to Human Geography or World Regional Geography. And that's like, where are the regions and why do we call Europe Europe? And what is happening in Africa? Are there many differences between North Africa or South or Sub-Saharan Africa? And when we think about ways to use environmental skill sets, specifically in Montana, I teach a class on energy, and I teach a class on water, and I teach a class on it's on sustainability, but not in a way where it's like everybody make sure you're recycling your bottle caps. It's like, how can we make decisions in a larger scale of our lifetimes that stay true to our ways of thinking about and using environments in a way that best case sustains them for our future generations. And I do use GIS in my regular work. I think I've maybe in the last 3 years, I never make a map in GIS alone. I always make it with my students. You'll get to see some of those today. And the reason I've stopped doing them alone is because I can make you the best rudimentary map you'll ever need out of GIS. But my students, like Haley, don't let her fool you. She's a bit of a magician with GIS. You'll find that out this week. But like I'll sit down with Haley or sit down with Haley's classmates, one of whom is coming tomorrow to speak, to make sure that my maps have, number one, color schemes that Gen Z in this case is interested in. Number two, there's always some newfangled new thing that Haley knows or James knows or whoever that can help me with my map making. So I use it and we talk about it in class all the time. But for me, I always want to produce maps that are better than my ability. Honestly, it's just full disclosure. And so having new students, or sorry, like students with experience that can come in and help make maps better. I'm trying to emphasize the team aspect of how GIS has happened in my life. So I certainly will sit down with my colleagues or with Haley or her colleagues and say, this is my data set. Can we think about ways to map that? Okay, so this is me being a fabulous geographer in the field. The reason you need a turban like that, which I'll be honest, I thought was a little bit of overkill when I arrived in the desert, everyone was wearing them. And I was like, this is weird. Like we have modern hats to wear. And then they drive you like 100 miles out into the desert and it's really windy and it's really sunny and like the sand is being blown in your face and it's painful. And like they start laughing at the Westerners. Then I'm like, oh, I need a turban. That's why. So that, you just teach you to wrap it around your head and you cover up your face. So it's just your eyes are showing and it's how you can function in the desert. So less of an outfit, although I do love that outfit, but more of a functional use in a place that's rather strange to us just thinking about life here in Montana. So here we are. We are all essentially a lot of strangers meeting online today. And what do we all have in common? Well, we all live in an unbelievably beautiful, diverse, and extraordinary landscape here in Montana. And I think we all share an interest in geospatial thinking. I might be overselling it a little bit, but hopefully by the end of today, hopefully by the end of my lecture today, you'll think that geospatial thinking is awesome. But let's think about what is Montana, why does this matter, Beth? Here is what pops up when you look for Montana on the internet. And right away, a map is one of the things that comes into play for us. We've all seen a map of Montana before. None of us were wondering where we were located, but now we can see a few things. We've got picturesque landscapes that the internet is showing us, or the awesome highlights of Montana. We have other information of like what people might like to do if they're here, what like we have a YouTube linking beaver geography, which actually I need someone to do a map on because it's fascinating where beavers can make dams. If you need a project later, let's do that one. So here's Montana. Here's where we all are and kind of how we all begin our understanding of the world around us. Me, certainly, anyway. So we always start off today with an icebreaker. So let me just tell you that I hate icebreakers. Whenever anyone says we're going to have one, I'm filled with dread. However, without telling you this fact is unfair, I have met one of my best friends during an icebreaker. So I do them in my classes, even though I hate them because it's so fun to meet a new best friend during an icebreaker. So here's our icebreaker. I want to know the coolest place that everyone has seen a night sky. So talk to somebody next to you, and it's happening again. Talk to somebody next to you in your group and let us know in the chat function, which I can't get to, where's the coolest place you've seen the night sky? Or maybe the name of your new best friend that you just met. Ooh, really jealous, Jeannie. That's fantastic. Oh, wow. The Southern Hemisphere. You knew too, didn't you? You knew right away, Susie. That's cool. Jealous. We're excited, Haley. No pressure, but I think it's going to be amazing. Do we have anybody from our camps that have, I mean, I guess we could all say Montana, and it's a pretty good answer, honestly.
So we can't type in the chat for some reason. I don't
Okay,
know
well,
why.
please share verbally.
Sure. The Painted Desert.
Ooh, wow.
How about you guys? Southern Alaska.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
And
I was gonna say the same, like.
oh, two Southern Alaskas, 2 votes for Southern Alaska. So
2 votes. What is in Southern Alaska that makes the view so gorgeous?
the Northern Lights,
Lack of urban lights or because they're there?
because of the Northern Lights, but also, all
Oh.
these places have the very limited light pollution, right?
Yeah,
Really
yep,
helps with the
yep.
night sky.
Totally. Fort Peck, hey, that's great. Did you just say that to pitch today? This is a good answer. What made it so beautiful
No.
on the lake at Fort Peck?
Just how dark it was. Again, the lack of light pollution
Yeah.
really helps with being able to actually see the night sky.
Yep, totally. Okay, so I have never seen the Northern Lights. I am jealous. I know, Jeannie. I know. So you got to see those. That's incredible. I think a lot of other people also have seen them. We just don't see their answers here. Haley, the lack of light, same for me. Susie, though, flipping the hemispheres. So that I didn't even think of that today. The northern hemisphere where we live has a certain night sky that of course is different if you're looking at the sky from the southern hemisphere, so you're going to see like entirely different stars. That was a great answer. The Painted Desert, was this one fabulous because of the colors from the landscape around you, or maybe just like lack of light?
No, yeah, the lack of light pollution.
Lack of light. But did
The
the
lands-
desert
I
kind of
mean,
light up
landscape
as
al-
well under the moonlight?
Not really. It's pretty dark
Okay,
out
so it's
there.
lack of light.
Pretty
All
during
right,
the
right on.
day, pretty during the day, right? But at night, really dark. But able to actually track satellites and like see
Oh boy,
the
yeah.
ISS go over several times. It's pretty cool.
Ah, that's really cool. So spaceships also, or aliens. I know that's not what you said,
Spaceships,
but
yep.
that's also stuff we can see in the night sky.
That is what
Yeah,
I said.
all of that is true. The place that I saw the night sky that was more meaningful is in the Sahara Desert. How did I get this to change last time? I mean, can I
When
just
you
leave it
presented, we
here?
went into that display settings again.
Yeah, I was
Try
gonna say
presenting again.
display settings.
Where do I go? Do I click this?
Yes.
Yep.
And then, oh,
This-
Yep.
swap. Brilliant. Okay,
You
we're
got it.
back. Here is my night sky. So when I was in the Sahara, this picture of me and my camel. Just kidding. That's not me. I just grabbed this from the internet. I wanted to make you laugh. However, I was 7,000 miles away from where I'm sitting this morning at my desk in Billings. So I flew all the way to North Africa to a country called Algeria, landed, flew 1,000 miles south from there into the depth of the Sahara Desert. So I'm 1,000 miles from anywhere. And then once we got there, they drove us like 150 miles into the desert. And on the way from the airport to the desert, you're leaving, it's not even civilization. There's just like an airport in the middle of nowhere. From the airport to our first night's camp, I saw 4 falling stars. That is the equivalent of like the last 20 years of falling stars in my life, just experience them in a normal day. So as there's one night in the Sahara Desert, I see these falling stars. I'm like, well, how many are happening every day anyway? And then like it would just lay on like the cold desert sand at night, but it was like lit up by the unbelievable amount of stars. It felt like it went on endlessly. And like I just sat there maybe thinking about my place in the universe, knowing that it just like there's no way that the universe ends. Like it just goes on forever. This is all guesses. This is me just internalizing experience of why was it such a beautiful night? Same as many of you, was this lack of light from cities. That's basically what we're talking about here. So I also have not seen the Milky Way, but we can see it here in Montana. So I won't X out of everything to make you all wait to tell me, but I assume that many of you have looked up and seen the Milky Way. And the reason that's cool is because only like a third of the world can see the Milky Way at night, and Montana is part of that 1/3 of the world. It's very rare to have access to a night sky, kind of how we do here in Montana already. So Montana is a great place to think about night skies, or what are we talking about night skies in a GIS field school in the summertime anyway? Well, we could probably map that. So what types of information would we need to have if we were going to map the night sky? So before we go into like the literal data, we've already mentioned a lot of these things. So we mentioned lack of light. All of the places referenced were in rural areas, or like no one said like the middle of Billings is the best night sky I've ever seen. No one said like on the Vegas Strip, or where are these bright downtown like Times Square? You can't see the sky. So okay, so we know we have to have like a remote place, a rural kind of a landscape, distance from cities or lighted roads, etc. And so like as I'm listing these things, I'm sure you're thinking to yourselves, yeah, we could probably map like where the roads are, where the towns are, where the light pollution is. So here's what the internet says about can we map the night sky? Yeah, you can map it easily. So just like Earth, the sky is charted using celestial coordinates and similar latitude and longitudes, etc. So you can go on and you can think about ways that, I mean, look at all the apps we could have to look at the night sky. So I think Susie, again, I'm not going to X out to look, but I think you named the other celestial stars that you saw in the southern hemisphere. I can't remember what you said, but it's this other thing that we wouldn't get to look at otherwise. So for Susie's answer in Peru, we would have to know what hemisphere she was in to know the night sky that she was looking at. So all of these things from relatively diverse experiences of where and why and how we experienced a beautiful night sky, they're all things that we can map, that we can think about, well, what would be like Southern Alaska is a great answer because it takes into account quite a few things. Remote, lack of light pollution, and sort of gives you that probably access to northern lights, certainly, and maybe the Milky Way. I assume you can see it in Alaska as well. So we know where they're happening. We understand generally why they're happening. So let's just take a look at how geography then comes into play for all of this. And I need you all to know that I only have this one slide on geography with my one statement, and it's my entire life. This is the hardest slide I'll give to you today. I'm going to do it quickly. Why are people where they are? How they get there? What are they doing there? Why do they stay there? What kind of languages do they speak, or religions do they practice, or why are those things that we talk about when we think about different places? So even today, like when Haley referenced that she saw a beautiful night sky on a lake at Fort Peck, if you had that same sentence, but you did it at some group event in Tennessee, no one would know what that was. So we have general landmarkers because we're all in Montana, because we all have experiences here. So the reason I'm in Montana is because I came for a job. The reason many of you are in Montana is because you were born here. Your parents came for other reasons or were here for other reasons. So why, who, what, where, when, and how, these all come into play when we start to think about what are the things that we can map? What does space mean along the lines of any of this anyway? So this image, I always tell my students that this is my favorite map. It is, without question. However, it's not a map. This is just an image. This is a picture. So this is the Earth at night as seen from outer space. So what are we looking at? Oh, obviously, Beth, we're looking at light. Wow, okay, so we can see light pollution pretty specifically here, exactly where it is. And this is perhaps a surprising pattern to you. Let's look a little closer. This is where we live. So here in the Western United States, if you compare that to the Eastern United States, I mean, they barely have any parts that are polluted with this light pollution. And then you have us out west. So there's tons of spaces to have different access to a night sky. And this matters. It doesn't matter necessarily like what our latitude and longitude is, but it does matter if we're on the East Coast or West Coast. And not because those fundamentally have different night skies. It's because the country was sort of it grew westward. So all of the infrastructure from our the beginning of the country, as far as industrializing and having like rural electrification happen, it happened on the East Coast. So you head west into sort of the west or the open frontier, you start to see this lack of concentrated population. So then let's compare that to here, this circle. This is in the Sahara. This is where I was when I was so deep in the desert, seeing falling stars and being relatively unprepared with the capacity to experience the vastness of the night sky in this particular setting. So, okay, I've listed some things. The Sahara Desert, it's well known. We know where that is. We know it's in North Africa. And while we're here, if you look just a little bit here to my right, we see this, and it's a strange thing on this particular image, this map. And so I will show students this and say, like, what do you think that is? What's going on here? It's a very strange feature in the middle of a desert. Well, what's happening here is that's the Nile River. So if we zoom into my grainy picture from this slide to see what this strange occurrence is in the middle of this sort of North Africa near the Middle East, well, we can see that in Egypt, the Nile River Valley is without question, and there's actually no competition on Earth of a place that's more densely inhabited, specifically because, I mean, obviously, so you have a water source. So the Nile River, just like the Yellowstone, it flows north. So we're looking at the Nile River here as it flows northward into the Mediterranean Sea, which is right here. And then this is the Red Sea. I mean, if you're really a stickler for the news, the Strait of Hormuz is like right over to the right over here. But what we're looking at, you come up through here, through the Suez Canal, and you can see all of this with this population. So fun facts as we look at this map and try to think about what this might feel like. The state of Montana, we have about 1.4 million people over just so much land. We have so much land. I was recently traveling in Europe, and Montana is bigger than the country of Germany, which is really weird to tell Germans that, because there's like 80 million people that live in Germany, and it's smaller than our state where 1.4 million people live. Okay, so here, this is Egypt. Egypt has a population of 110 million people. Of that, 95% of them live along the river. Well, what's that all about? Well, water is life. You can't live in the desert if you don't have water. The only place you can live in Egypt is along the banks of the Nile River, as we can see here in this image. So now we start to see like, oh, okay, all right. So there's like physical phenomena, deserts, rivers, lights, cities, urbanization. And then there's other things that are happening, like you need water to survive. You're in which particular hemisphere? What is it that you're seeing? And then how are these places linked to other places? I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know how many of you got out of bed this morning thinking, I really hope we talk about Egypt today. I was hoping to learn a little bit about how densely populated the Nile River is. That's kind of an odd fun fact. It is the best fun fact from our Earth at Night image here, because that just seems so strange when you look at it from the rest of the story there. We could spend the rest of today on this map and all the different things that you can see. So I won't, because I mean, this is a very fun one, but let's keep going. So as the team of us put this whole week-long session of like field school, what do we want students to have access to or understand? I mean, we're not going to a college class. We just want to start with this foundation of, man, there's a lot of information out there and it's spatial and we can make connections to different things. So when we think about geospatial data, we think about GIS, we can think about like maps have layers that answer questions, and all of that comes into play with GIS. So GIS is the pattern, it's the question, and it's the answer. Why do people live along the Nile River in Egypt? A map is not going to tell you that. The analysis of, oh, because that's the only water that they have there. So you have these questions and you have these answers. But let's like reverse a little bit here. Like, what does GIS stand for in the first place? Do I talk about it all the time and tell everyone they need to do it? Yes. Am I maybe not so objective? True. And yet, GIS and GIS information systems, I mean, none of you, well, some of us remember, we remember life before like GPS. We remember life before our phones got us where we're going. I honestly don't know how we survived, because even in the streets of Paris, I'm like following my phone, like, oh, we got to turn left here. And I don't know how we did it beforehand, but we got maps that used to exist only on paper, and now they live in your phone. And geographers were behind all of that. And all the stuff we need to know when we're on our phone is things like, okay, let's just use my Paris example. I'm in Paris, France. I'm walking around. I got a friend with me. He's never been to Paris before. I got to make, here's the Eiffel Tower. How do we get to the Eiffel Tower? You need a map. You need a map to get yourself there. Uh, all the signs are in French. I needed a little bit of help to see, like, oh, how does this path go, or where do I go here? And all of that is information that a GIS analyst put into these maps that we have, so that my little cell phone out, from Montana, I'd be like, oh, yes, well, Beth, up here on the Champs-Élysées, you turn left to go to the Arc de Triomphe, or fill in the rest of that blank. Okay, so we've linked paper maps, paper experiences, written knowledge, and we've now put them into these visualizations. So clearly, like any Gen Z, Gen Alpha, which I think I've covered it well than the rest of us on the call today, all of your lives are digital. You're digital nomads. It's always been there. So your maps are something that, boy, that just took like so much of a social change and an academic effort to get that, to get all of this going in our digital age. But man, it is powerful to see how it's grown and the types of maps we can make now. So what does it answer? Well, GIS is answering all sorts of questions. I actually hope you've come up with some that I haven't even answered today, because the questioning, and for me personally, my curiosity, there isn't an end, which is sometimes a little annoying. I would like to just be like, yes, thank you, that's enough information now. But I can't not wonder, why is this here? Who put that there? What's going in here? Why? What do all of these things mean when they're coming together? So like spatial patterns that emerge, these are things like last night on TikTok, the most reliable place for information on the internet. I watched somebody make a map. This is literally what I do on TikTok. I watch people make maps. I'm sorry, it's fun. You should try it. But the map was showing us where the effects of El Nino, which will be a heightened experience this year, like in the United States, what parts of the United States are going to feel different aspects. So like tidal changes on the coast. In the middle of the country, there's like an increased heat wave, but it's taking data, putting it on a map, and explaining something. Where's El Nino going to intensify? On TikTok, of all places, to find these maps. So why does it matter? A TikTok map, I'll be honest, doesn't matter as much as I want it to, but it sure was entertaining. But people who are taking maps of weather patterns and data are farmers. There was a book, it's called The Farmer's Almanac. I think they still print it, but in the olden times, we used to buy the Farmer's Almanac, and it was like predicting what the weather was going to be that year based upon a historical combination of data on whatever, this summer was historically hot, dry, windy, rainy, etc. So we were trying to predict things without spatial data. So now that we have spatial data that we can use to make decisions with, that's where it's getting into why this matters. So it's not just like, here's a map, there you go, that's the roads. It's, okay, here's a map, there you go, there's the roads, and here's how you get to the courthouse, the grocery store. What did I just search? Oh, hotels near me. My parents are coming to visit tonight, and I just needed to know which one was closest. Did I go outside and get in my car and drive around? No, I just asked my map, which one's closest to me. Boom, that's where my parents are staying tonight. That is it sounds normal, I know, but that's awesome that we can do that now. So as I've gotten you going on my own personal, most curious and most enjoyable task and topic of my life, let's just talk about how you're geographers anyway. We're all doing this. We're all experiencing geography in our everyday lives. So I've made a lot of references to reading the sky for other things. So you can read the sky, and actually many of you are probably way better at reading the sky in Montana than I am. So you can watch the sky, when a storm's coming. You know when a storm's coming, but it's not going to rain on you. You know when something is happening, and maybe you live near a mountain range, and mountain ranges affect the weather that comes your way. So you know those things. Or like reading the sky in my life, this has happened to me twice in Montana, although missing what I thought it was. I'm from Nebraska, and I grew up in Tornado Alley. So I know a tornado skyline. I don't even have to wonder or remember. There was 2 times in here in Montana where I walked outside and the sky was yellow. And it kind of smelled like cotton candy. And it was a little sticky, but it just felt like a tornado. Both of those instances, I became very physically uncomfortable. And like the Montanans with me were like, what are you talking about? Now I know there was a tornado that came through Billings in the last decade or two, but otherwise it's not a common event here. So reading the sky, I will read something different because I'm from a different place. Then, like knowing the distance here in Montana, Montanans have this capacity for, uh, like, if you take a picture of the mountains you're looking at and send it to your Montana buddy, they're like, "Oh, I know exactly where you are." It's really disconcerting, but you all are very good at this. But even in like when I was in Europe and people are like, "Oh, where's Montana?" Well, like it's. Do you know where Canada is? So we're just kind of south of Canada. Oh yeah, like how far? I don't know. It's like a 5-hour drive to Canada. And they all like laugh at that because they wouldn't drive 5 hours to see the Pope. They wouldn't drive 5 hours for anything. It seems like this absurd space to them. But all of us today on this meeting are like, 5 hours? Come on, guys, like toughen up, right? It's not that far. It's not that far. But distances mean different things when you are living in different environments. Noticing changes. So all the time, do you see shifts in these landforms? That's actually why I was asking questions about like the painted desert, because I think the painted desert is existing in a climate, first of all, so desert climate that's going to create maybe optimal physiological factors to have this like gorgeous night sky. But then obviously, like if it's cloudy and rainy, we can't see the night sky. The year I moved to Montana was 2021, and it was a crazy bad summer for fires. And so I moved to Montana, and like everybody was like, "It's so beautiful there, you're gonna love it." And I moved to town, and it's hot and it's smoky. And I had moved to Bozeman, and I'm a geographer, obviously, when this story happened. And so I'm there for like 2, 3 weeks, and then it rains. And all of a sudden, I can see that Bozeman is surrounded by mountains, and I didn't see them before. That's how smoky it was. So I went around like to everybody I knew in my first 2 weeks of living here, and I was like, "Did you guys know there's mountains?" Because it really, really impedes your ability to look and see and feel the place around you if there are changes happening or impediments like smoke from a wildfire. So then we're heading into this idea of like feeling the place. Feeling the place in Montana is actually, I commend Montana and Montanans. It is a very, I think it's a pretty official, although no one will ever openly talk about it, but there's a way to become conscious of Montana aspects that are important. And they're important here for a lot of reasons that maybe aren't obvious to newcomers like me immediately. So all of you in your lives, you know where to be or where not to be, or what parts like I also learned that a lot of native Montanans don't wear winter coats. Like you just don't need them, and you're just rocking your hoodie all winter, which I'm not that tough. I can't do that. What parts of Montana are crowded or quiet? A lot of people have a lot of opinions about Bozeman, good or bad. There's opinions about how it's getting crowded or more crowded. And then a lot of the places that we saw night skies earlier are places that are quiet. And I think as Montanans, we can all appreciate like some of those quiet places are why we're here in the first place. So a map you might not expect. Here, I was prepping this lecture yesterday. I usually spend the day before our field school starts to just think through like, what are cool things happening right now? What are messages that students might be open to? So historically, I've talked about the heavy metal band Metallica, and really wanted to do it again this year, but decided that perhaps going with a night sky could be more applicable to our students and all of us as our daily lives as Montanans. So here we can see that darkness, even though it's invisible, can be mapped, which is a crazy sentence. Who maps invisible stuff? We do. The brightest places are concentrated in the eastern United States. If you're looking at this map, it's showing you light pollution. It's also showing you where everyone in the United States lives. This is not a population map, but it's showing you a population map. Because to achieve that level of light pollution, you need to have like X million number of people living in that vicinity, because why else would you need that much light? So we're looking at a map, and please continue to look at this map. If you drew a line kind of like down the middle, right where that light pollution stops in the middle of this map, 80% of our country's population lives east of it. 80%, which means that 20% of our country's population lives west of it. And of that 20%, basically all of it is in California with a little bit in Oregon and Washington. And then the rest of us just kind of split up the smaller percentage of population. So if you have friends or family on the East Coast that have never been west, I have a lot actually. It's weird that they haven't been out here. They just can't conceptualize space, distance, maybe enormity of things, whether that's a mountain or the enormity of storms that you can see for miles coming in. But it's just where we live, and as far as that's related to light pollution, is we are very special in the awesomest ways of being away from some of that light pollution. Although you can see, so if we look at me in Billings today, like there's a lot of light pollution in Billings, but for a short drive for Americans, you could get to places that don't have that much light pollution. So darkness is not only empty space, as I was saying, like the map is showing you where everybody lives. So it's showing you human populations. It's also showing you mountain ranges. It is actually showing you a desert in the Nevada part of this and the northern like Mexico part of this. So we're looking at a lot of things from this one data point of light pollution. So dark places often coincide with wild open lands such as forests, parks, and protected natural areas with minimal human disturbances. I want to just spin back to our this image here, and you can see that the Sahara Desert can be seen because there's no light there. The Amazon rainforest can be seen because there's really not a lot of light there. The Siberia can be seen because there's not a lot of light. Even down here in Australia, I mean, this is the outback. I mean, it's all desert in the middle. So in the absence of light, you can see whether we have massive deserts, large rainforest areas, huge swaths of frozen tundra, permafrost, etc. So the maps are always showing us all sorts of things. The way that we think about data and how it's connected to this data point or this thought or this cultural item, all of this is part of why darkness is something that we would care about, how we can think about it as a society, and how, as geographers or geospatial thinkers for this week anyway, we can answer the question, why does Montana still have large dark areas? Well, I think we already know these answers. We have a really small population that does have clustered patterns in our state. We have very specific roadways that reduce the spread of this artificial light. And then Montana has protected public and protected tribal lands that have relative complete control over the light pollution in those specific areas. So because of that, there's just a lot of open space still in Montana. So I've got two maps here. One is showing just a very rudimentary map of Montana here on the top. Well, they're both Montana. So on top is the map we started with. So where in Montana would be the best spot for a stargazing night? It's probably where Haley was earlier, but I wanted to show you. So on this top map, all I have an overlay of the United States. I have an overlay of the state of Montana. I've got some water bodies included, but not all. I've got a couple of roads included, but not all. And I have the names of some cities, but not all. And so you can see in the map here on the bottom that our light pollution follows roadways, urban areas. And other than that, we have these areas of open expanse still. So which places are darkest but still safe and accessible? How close are those dark places to roads or towns? Again, when I moved to Montana, I've lived in places, I came from South Carolina, so not a lot in common with Montana. But in South Carolina, they have streetlights on every road. There is no road that doesn't have a streetlight. You're never driving in the dark because every road has a light on it. So when I first moved to Montana, and there weren't streetlights on every road, and I like have my brights on in downtown Bozeman, like I can't see, what's the name of that street? So Montana has made big, large scale decisions like we aren't going to light every single street so that Beth Nelson can drive safely at night. But it was a decision made in part to reduce the amount of light pollution in Montana because there's a higher importance of wildlife around us than there is in other parts of our country. Okay, so we've arrived at the second interactive point of class today, lecture, presentation. A map can be about almost anything, and I have X'd out almost because to this day, I have not been stumped on something that cannot be mapped. So we do this every year, and we talk about tell me something that you think can't be mapped. I am ready. Also talk to your buddies, talk to the person next to you, find your new bestie. Haley, I want you to go first and tell me something you think can't be mapped. Kick us off. Make it difficult.
I'm thinking because there really isn't a whole lot that can't be mapped.
Yes.
Uh,
Anybody from any of our camp locations? Something that cannot be mapped. We should probably ask AI.
Earthworm distribution.
What form distribution?
Earthworm.
Oh yeah.
Genius. Insect distribution.
I spelled distribution wrong. Ooh, under the
Earthworm,
ocean. Ah, for the win. That one is tricky. We're trying so hard. Okay, let's walk through these though. Okay. So under the ocean first, we think we know that the deepest place on Earth is the Mariana Trenches, which are kind of like off the coast of like, are they off the coast of Australia or Indonesia? Come on, geographers. Well, no one knows if I'm making it up. I'm going to say Australia. So we've got the Mariana Trenches, and we have no idea what lurks below the sea. That's great. We can map it with the data that we have, which is going to be like a LiDAR or some radar sensing the depth of the ocean to create the ocean floor elevations. But it's a mystery. Okay, so half points for under the ocean. Earthworm distribution, great one. Okay, what do earthworms need to exist? Dirt. Compost. Soils to earthworm in.
I
So
would say soil over dirt for sure. Right?
We've met a soil scientist, and it is not me. Soil over dirt. Soil matters. Well, where don't we have
Soil
soil?
matters.
We don't have soil in the bottom of the ocean, so we would not find earthworms there unless there's like a deep water ocean earthworm that we don't know about, but we don't know about it yet. Okay, so we need to have soil.
It would be
We need to
seaworm.
probably have relatively like high nutrient soil. So if we were thinking like the Midwest in the Dust Bowl, there aren't any nutrients in the soil, so earthworms wouldn't be able to live healthy or reproduce there. So we're taking a lot of
She's debunking
factors.
it. She's
Sorry, go
mapping it
ahead.
for you. Is she? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know I wasn't muted.
Oh
I
no,
was just
that's
saying
okay.
you're mapping earthworms, and we thought it was impossible.
Yeah, we did. It maybe is. No, I think that we could find certainly where healthy soils were and where there was environments like a temperature that earthworms can or can't sustain. So I assume they cannot sustain in super cold, frozen like permafrost. So probably not in Siberia. Although if you told me there was a hardy earthworm that could survive permafrost, I would not be surprised because earthworms are incredibly resilient and tough. Okay, what else? We've had students one year, the first year, they wanted to know how we could map raves, and they meant like crazy party music with light sticks. That's what they meant. And so we figured out how to map that. So earthworms under the ocean. One time I had a student say, I don't like anything geographic. I just like to sleep. And I was like, amen. Me too. I love to sleep. Did you know that sleeping patterns are actually different across the globe? Let's take the white nights, for instance. If you live like in Alaska or in the upper Arctic latitudes, and in the wintertime, it's dark the whole time. In the summer, it's light all the time. It's really hard to fall asleep if it's still like as though the sun is shining midday at 1 a.m. So sleep patterns will change the globe over. It'll change seasonally, and it'll change latitudinally. So there's lots of stuff that seems like it just might happen in sort of like a vacuum, but everything around us is tied to something geographic in some way, somehow. So we go through and think, what are all the ways that we can map everything or anything? And as you go through all of the exercises that our team has put together for this particular like summer field school adventure are things around you, or things that your educators were interested in, thinking that you would like to know. How do we map that? So we do wildfire, we do elk, we do the different ways that whatever data you're looking at or want to think through, how can we make that into a map that is spatial information, that poses a question, has data that once analyzed can tell us the answers to those questions. So if Haley wanted to go elk hunting, putting herself in a boat in the middle of the Yellowstone is probably not the most efficient way to go about that. If Haley wanted to go fishing, maybe that's a different story. So when we think about just mapping things, or we think about where are all the elk, or where do the fires happen, or what is the risk, there are things that are seemingly unrelated, sort of happening outside of one another. But all of this information together comes up to show some very specific and very like obvious then connections that are spatial, so geospatial data. So a few things that I was putting together, it's Montana specific. We can look at wildfire smoke, you will, in one of the labs. We can look at where dinosaur fossils are. You know, this is the first place I've ever lived that dinosaur fossils are a thing and they're common. And I have students, I've had so many paleontology students over the years, and I've never had one before in my entire teaching career. So the fact that dinosaur fossils exist in Montana has created this entire spatial flow of students from all over that want to be paleontologists who study dinosaurs. So that's very specific to Montana. We always are looking at drought and precipitation. I'm sure you've all heard people say already, like, oh, worried about the wildfires this summer because we didn't get enough moisture over the winter. I've heard that that data is collected every year. How much snow did we get? What's the wildfire risk going to be? What types of climatic or weather influences are going to be happening? Population change, this is shown, we've actually looked at a few different maps that collect different data, but have shown this, that we can see parts of Montana's towns, or I mean, we could even say like regions. Some of them are growing and some of them are shrinking. They're actually for different reasons. We can look at languages and cultures. So why are specific indigenous languages where they are? How do they spread or diffuse? How do we use maps as a way to preserve language identity? So again, so I was just in Europe, and I'm sorry to tell you this story, but in Germany, I don't speak any German. I can say like, thank you, Danke. I don't even think I said hello. Like, I didn't know. So I would have to start with, I'm really sorry, I do speak English. And everybody did. And I was so disappointed. Did it make my life easier? Yeah, by like 1,000,000%. But do I want everyone on earth speaking English? No. So mapping where languages are actually is part of the process of preserving those languages. It would be easy for the whole world to start speaking English, and I really hope they don't, because that's part of the cultural landscape that I don't want to be gone forever. And then, like I said already, we have a lab set up, if you choose to do this lab, that looks at elk populations in the state. And we can do it with, I mean, you could fill in any animal for, like, where are the wolves? Where are the eagles? Where are the fill in the blank of whatever it is you're looking at? And then you can collect information about why those things would be where they are and in what sort of population levels. So I'm taking the entirety of geography, all of this way of thinking with geospatial information and information processing. How do we boil all of that down to maps? I mean, already I hope you feel this maybe like, holy smokes, there's so much information. How do we get that all down to just like one little map showing one little thing? And how do you make those decisions? So as I was showing you images and maps today, that's why I was pointing out here, all this is a picture of the Earth from space showing lights. That's all this is. Here is a map where I just had the outline of Montana and some of the water features and some of the roads. What is it about your map that is the important part? What do you want to have people walk away with as their message from your map? Whose perspective? Whose story? What are these things representing or prioritizing? And also, every map tells one story, but every map tells 1,000 other stories just from that one story. And it's truly like, I have the best job. I get to talk about what I love and kind of get better at it every year. But when I put up maps that show things like, I mean, you could pick any strange metric, put up a map of of like zip codes that start with sevens. I don't even know where that is, but it would help you understand, like, why is this part sevens with the postal code, but this part isn't? What information is easy to get to the 7 number postal code and what isn't? Is number 7 behind a mountain, an ocean, or a desert? Because it's really hard to get to those places. Is it on an island? Probably not. I don't know what Hawaii's postal code is, but these are just, I'm trying to come up with like one small, seemingly not important data point, but it can tell you so many things. When we understand that maps are powerful, we have to understand that when we make maps and we make claims and say things about the world around us in our maps, it is not without our opinions or our interpretation of it. So when you think about a map that we might see in any elementary school classroom, it shows the United States, Europe, and Russia kind of on top, and Greenland looks absolutely massive, even though we all know that Africa is actually bigger than Greenland, but we use the same map. This is showing and subliminally like putting this idea that the West and Russia are on top, like good and big and powerful. And none of those are true. Not, I mean, maybe none of those are false, but it's not necessarily a real representation of something. So everything in a map comes with power about what is it that we really want to be saying from this map that we are using. So what are we going to do at field school this week? Well, it's awesome. Don't worry. We're going to look at a lot of maps. I know we've already done it. You're going to make your own maps. It is such a thrilling feeling to start to put together your first map and start to get your layers loaded in so that they're flowing and the map starts to light up in front of you. And then you make decisions about what color scheme do I want here. I'll show you some maps here in a little bit. What types of questions do I need answered from this map that we are making? And then like the coolest, one of the a million cool things about maps is that you don't need to share a language necessarily to share a map. So once I can get people that don't speak English to understand that I'm a geographer, the next thing they do is they get a map and they show it to me. This map shows that my ancestors were the first settlement here in this Berber blah 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 in northern blah blah blah. This is the whole thing. Maps, Earth, and our experiences in them can be shared through time and space. We have one of our camps last year took students to a rock that had images etched into it thousands of years ago, and it's a map. It's a map showing in this part of Montana where good hunting grounds are. It's like, how does that map still make sense to us thousands of years later? Because you don't need to share a language to share a map. And they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. This one here on screen with us is showing the elevation of like Western Montana. Well, we know that. I live in Eastern Montana. So the mountain ranges are different here. I can still see them on my drive home from work. They're just different than in Western Montana. So it's just a topographic map. You probably already figured that out. So what makes a map worth looking at? When you're making your maps, you're thinking about your maps. We must have a good question, which is what we've been doing with all of our maps thus far today. Why does everybody live along the Nile River in Egypt? Why do we care about that? If any of you are super interested, you should ask Haley about the Great Renaissance Dam from Ethiopia that affects the water delivery to the Nile River. Now I'm just trying to pique your curiosity because that's fascinating. However, we can't analyze that situation unless we have good data. Data that we might need to show the impact of a dam on the Nile River is water flow. Is there more or less water flowing through the Nile River pre or post the completion of a dam installation? Well, we need to know that data to make any real calls. Then we must have this idea of a visual pattern. If we look at this map here, we can see that topographically, we know Western Montana is it's where all the mountains are. Rocky Mountain Range. This is a relatively north-south facing mountain range, meaning it affects weather way more than if it were east-west facing. We know all of that. We know all that because we live it. It's part of our daily life and the things that we talk about. And then, like, is this story worth telling? You don't have to sell me on this. I think any story worth telling is worth telling. Stories are the best, but you have to put your information together in a way that's meaningful for people. My bar is pretty low. I'll be interested in basically anything that you make. But if you want to show it to, let's say, like your like city council, or you want to take this to the tribal council. What is it that you are mapping? What is the story that you need to be told to have your opinion or your idea or whatever it is you're proposing become meaningful? How can you connect with other people's experiences or communities and then kind of bring that all back together with what it is that we're developing? So how do I use maps in my work? You know, it changes all the time. So as a professor, I have to do research and get my research published in peer-reviewed journals. It's a whole longer story. But when I'm writing an article, the map is the last thing that I make. Last thing. So I'll show you these maps. So for these maps here, these are actually all three from different projects. So this first image is the country of Algeria, which you can see Algeria is here in North Africa. It's the biggest country in Africa by area. So not the biggest population, but it has the biggest space. And this map shows where everybody lives, and they all live in these teal areas. So everybody lives in the northern part of Algeria. Duh, the rest of the country is the Sahara. That makes complete sense. Now you might be wondering, why does this map have purple, teal, and gray? And the reason is because this map is more accessible to people with color blindness than it would be if we were using red and greens. So that's this map I made with a student, and we decided to go with this color combination for that purpose. The Sahara is not purple, probably can be sometimes. The map here in the middle, this is showing solar insolation, meaning how much solar energy is available in one given spot at any time. And it's comparing the country of Algeria to the American state of Arizona. And the reason it is because Algeria, the country, and Arizona, the state, have exactly the same solar resource. They have exactly the same climate. Isn't that crazy? This article, I worked with a colleague of mine, and we were discussing solar energy has not been successful in either Arizona or Algeria, but for wildly different reasons. So quickly, why has solar energy, like putting solar panels on a rooftop, it is not a thing in Arizona. Sure, there's instances where it is, but it's much less than in, say, Germany. Germany is not as sunny as Arizona, so why would they have more solar panels than Arizona? Well, it's a longer story of how Arizonans don't like to be told to do anything, and they think solar panels are ugly. And you might be thinking, like, Beth, isn't it a little bit more nuanced and complex than that? Yes and no. Algeria doesn't have solar energy because they don't trust France. And that's like the G-rated version of that story. They just don't really want outsiders to come in and tell them how to do anything. It has nothing to do with solar energy, but it does have to do with the 132 years of colonization that Algeria suffered at the hands of the French. So, okay, let's say Germany, this is a true story. Let's say, so Germany did come to Algeria and they said, hey, we know you hate the French, but we're German and we never did anything to you. And we think you might like to host us for our big solar array. And Algeria said, get out of here. I myself have had an Algerian look at me and say, who are you to study Algeria? They don't trust anybody. And that's why they don't have solar energy installations. So it's not like we don't know how. It's we don't like who's bringing them, which is different than the story from Arizona. And I don't think I would have known either of those answers by just looking at this one map. And certainly when I undertook that research with my colleague, at the end of it, we both were like, holy smokes, I didn't see any of this coming, but this is the answer that our data gives us. And then the third map here on the far right, this is showing parts of Algeria that I have a research. It's called a survey. Well, you do surveys all the time. So you just answer some questions online. And so I was having an increase of applications or of submission of these in different parts of Algeria. Now, you can't ask a lot of information of an Algerian because they don't trust anybody and they don't trust outsiders like myself, but you can ask for their postal code. That's why that was my example earlier, is because a postal code, first of all, your postal code that you were born in has more information about your health outcomes than any other piece of data from your life, which is wild. Like, how does specific places tell you if you have access to healthcare, access to clean water, access to education, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, there's just so much that we can glean from maps or spatial data in the first place. Now, here's the most recent map, and I worked on a former student with this. It's James Simpson, and he is our speaker tomorrow morning. And I hope that we embarrass him early on today because his maps are just incredible. So here I was working on an article that's showing the spaces in and around Paris, France. So Paris, France is this center part of this, and these are the arrondissements, which are districts, and they're labeled 1 through 20, and they go in a corkscrew. So you can see here in the center of Paris, first arrondissement, second, third, fourth, you spin out, and the immigrants live in 18, 19, 20th, and like I live with a family in the 20th, an Algerian family. But then you can see that other parts of these districts outside of Paris also have higher numbers of immigrant densities. Now, this is just telling you immigrants. It's not telling you where they came from, what generation they are. It's just telling you when these people came and registered their addresses, they were either immigrants or not, and that data was put into this map. So I wanted to be able to see the scale of France behind this map, and we worked together to come up with the different designations of the cutoffs for each percentage group. We talked about, do we need to, like, there's no label that says this middle part is Paris. We talked about that. It takes away from the rest of the map if we have these letters taking over a relatively small amount of space. So these are all decisions, and this map isn't perfect either. I mean, this article got rejected, so we got another chance to submit a map, but we can change it as we go through, thinking like, was this part helpful for me? Is this what I really wanted to say from it? So moving on, we're going to look at some GIS stuff. And I already looked through like most of these today, preparing because it's fun. So you can't see this. Here it is. So here are a bunch of things. You click on this link and here's some classroom activities galleries. And this is from ArcGIS or from their parent company, Esri. And we can look at these different projects that they've put together. I obviously clicked on zombies earlier because this is fascinating. It doesn't have a great use of maps, but because it's interesting, we're going to click on it together. So in a zombie apocalypse, I just need you to know I'm not going to make it. I'm going to die, and I don't have to worry about fighting the zombies, but some of you will. So here, this story map, it's taking us through what you will need to know and like how to survive a zombie apocalypse. Again, I assume none of you expected that we would be talking about a zombie apocalypse. I mean, even I didn't think we were going to do that today. So we've got this way of thinking like zombies versus GIS. How am I supposed to understand this information? And again, proximity to a hospital becomes important. Nobody will know how many zombies there are. Basic medicine, I mean, this is getting ridiculous, but look, they're showing us like in Los Angeles, how are we going to start thinking through what do we need? Who needs to go to Sam's Club for their zombie apocalypse supplies? I don't even, like, what do you buy? I don't know, water? I don't know what you buy. Anyway, so here's one example of how you can use maps to do, basically anything, honestly. Let's go to, I did this one, post-World War II Germany and the Berlin Wall, because I just visited the Berlin Wall. It was really incredible. And I encourage you all to do that. Mapping favorite color. This is a weird one. Mine's green. I don't know what your favorite color is. Let's see what happens. Oh, like, is it regional? Huh. I bet it is. Maybe we should do this next time. Wow, look at that. That I do not see an obvious emerging pattern, but my hypothesis was going to be my favorite color is green because it's the green of the corn that grows in the Nebraska summer. So I was thinking maybe there'd be a lot of us greens here in the Midwest, but it's kind of all over the place. Interesting. You got some blues though in the Pacific Northwest. Maybe that's because I don't know. This is me hypothesizing with limited information. This is really interesting. Yes, I realize I told you at the beginning that my curiosity is a lot. All right. Now, that brings us to signing on. So let's get ready. I need to return to this. Okay. We are ready to get folks signed on. Haley and Jeannie are here with me to troubleshoot. But everybody should have logins that will work. Chris, were you able to try some of the other ones?
We have tried them all and
they all show the error
aren't
message?
working. They all show the error message.
God, that's
And
weird. I
we're
tried some of them and they
temporarily locked out
worked.
we-
All right, Chris, we have some extra ones. I'm going to post them in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
No, thanks for your patience.
I just got taken.
Yes. Okay, so try starting with 61. It's quite possible it's something on our end because it's still happening.
Why is it
So
still
let's not
happening?
take our time here. Like, we don't need to take everybody's time. We can figure it out after this. That's okay.
Okay, we'll work on it.
Does it have a
I asked if
specific
there
like
were
error code message attached to it?
invalid. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was saying invalid password or login. Or login and password.
I got that with the 25 one that we sent. But then not again.
Oh, someone just posted that they were having the same issue. Kate, I
Yeah.
think.
Okay. Huh. Okay, so it's not you. It's not you at all. Okay, yeah, that's gonna take me a minute. Jeannie and or Haley, can you steal the show for a little bit while I get into this?
Actually, let's
Yeah.
give everyone a quick break first, maybe,
Great
because we've
idea.
been going for, so let's come back in about 5 minutes.
Cool.
If you're still working, because it looks like I can see Ryan still walking around. So if you're still working on it, go ahead. But if you're getting that invalid ID, let's take a 5-minute break and come back.